I want to invite Associate Professor Dr. Afet Coşkun to have her welcome message and invite the first speaker. Yes, please.
Yes, welcome all. It's a nice pleasure to be here with you. Session with the language part. During this session, I have 7 presentations from different institutions. The first event, the first joint event between Eskişehir Technical University and Eastern Mediterranean University. For the afternoon session, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Özlem Olgaç to present the cultural sustainability in relation to architectural conservation in interior architecture education presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Afet Hoca. I'm sharing my screen. Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, dear guests, dear administrators, dear students, colleagues. Today we will make a presentation together with Hacer Başarır Hoca. We prepared this together. The title of our presentation is Cultural Sustainability in Relation to Architectural Conservation in Interior Architecture Education. Why sustainability is our first question. Earth is losing its ability to support life due to soil, water, and atmospheric declines. Resources get more and more scarce, and ecological balance is changing in a populating world. Conserving Earth's systems in order to support life has become contemporary society's collective challenge. The capacities of land, water, and atmosphere need to be sustained for future. Sustainability is a fundamental choice to leave the Earth in equal or better shape for those that come after us, and the social, economical, and environmental pillars need to be in a balance, as mentioned by my colleagues in the morning sessions. The Sustainable Development Goals has also been explained by the previous conversation. I want to mention that some of these are more directly related with our field, and some of them are more indirectly related with our field. In that sense, in education, we gave place to some of these criteria. The cultural dimension has been integrated into the Sustainable Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Pillars as the 4th pillar. And where some of them integrate, some of the studies integrate social and cultural aspects in one single pillar. So in different sources, you can see these in different schemas, but with the same content. Cultural vitality, social equity, economic health, and environmental responsibility have to be in a balance so that we can talk about sustainability. Heritage buildings are reflections of culture and important for social attachment of community to context. The definition of cultural heritage involves both continuation from the past to the present and to the future, and also consideration of socio-cultural, ecological, and economic issues in order to conserve original identity. Therefore, continuity of heritage as a reflection of culture is required for the socio-cultural sustainability concept. Socio-cultural sustainability through the preservation of heritage buildings supports environmental sustainability through reductions in the use of new materials, in the use of energy for construction, and also in landfill waste. Moreover, it supports economic sustainability through cultural tourism, which includes cultural heritage tourism, religious tourism, and historical tourism. Cultural tourism increases tax credits for preservation and also employs local artisans. Adaptive reuse can be mentioned as a tool for cultural sustainability. Adaptive reuse offers significant opportunities for sustainability in the built environment. Buildings outlast civilizations, they evolve and they are changed, but their reuse emphasizes continuity. The adaptive reuse of heritage buildings is an essential component of sustainable development, while the new function of heritage building is depicted as one of the parameters to ensure its sustainability. The reuse of heritage buildings is regarded as a strategy to provide cultural sustainability with a specific social reference. Hence, adaptive reuse of heritage buildings improves the living quality through providing social and cultural activities according to the community needs and requirements. There should also be compatibility of a historic building with its new function by preserving the cultural significance. This needs both assessing the needs of future users and detecting the building transformation constraints posed by the culture of a building. Conservation and continuity can be achieved through adaptive reuse, which saves cultural messages from the past, which integrates social and economic activities and involves skills, knowledge, crafts, techniques, and materials which would otherwise disappear totally. In this sense, my colleague Hacer Başarır will continue from here to explain how we are reflecting these concepts in our common courses. Thank you, Hacer.
Thank you, Özlem Hocam. Yes, so in EMU, Department of Interior Architecture, we have two main courses that are directly related with cultural sustainability issues in relation to architectural conservation and adaptive reuse. First one is the course 276, which is measured drawing for adaptive reuse course. And the second one is 392, which is a design course, Interior Architectural Studio 4. Yes, Hocam. Considering the course of measured drawing for adaptive reuse, we are focusing on the contemporary renovation and reuse approaches for sustainability of historic buildings within cultural heritage and adaptive reuse. Additionally, the measurements of existing buildings are experienced on site, and detailed measured drawings are handled in the studio. Yes, our second course related to cultural sustainability issues is a design course. It's a third year course, Interior Architectural Studio 4. Here in 392, we deal with interior design projects, resolving larger and multifunctional spaces within an existing building with historical value, developing solutions by help of self-standing structural additions and implementations. And we focus on human needs, culture, technology, the relations of indoor environment with its close exterior materials, furniture, furnishing decisions of the interior space as well. Today in this presentation, we will focus on the measured drawing for adaptive reuse course. This course is, we would like to discuss the course learning outcomes in relation to sustainability issues. The course involves measurements of existing historical buildings on site and collecting necessary data, preparing scaled measured drawings, and also an introduction to contemporary adaptive reuse approaches for continuity of historic buildings as a part of cultural heritage. So the main aims and objectives of the course includes the contemporary renovation and reuse approaches for sustainability of historical buildings within cultural heritage, and evolution of adaptive reuse are examined through successful applications. And additionally, the measurements of existing buildings are experienced on-site and detailed measured drawings are handled in the studio. Yes, hocam. So we will discuss the course learning outcomes in relation to sustainability through different assignments that we assign the students. Yes, Özlem hocam. So basically we have 5 different assignments in this course, whereas first 3 of them are more related with the theoretical aspects of adaptive reuse. And the last 2 are more of includes on-site measurements. So in our first assignment is related to a research work, an analysis of ICOMOS charters and related international declarations. We gave students some clues as we list them here, and we expect them to analyze the given international charter or declaration and to prepare a digital presentation related to this issue. Here, they prepare this kind of PowerPoint presentations. And in terms of course learning outcomes, we expect them to critically thinking on cultural heritage. This can be related to historical, traditional, vernacular, or industrial heritage. And to think about sustainability through continuity of cultural environments, and to learn about international context on conservation approaches to historic buildings and environments, conservation and reuse of historic spaces, buildings, areas, and the role of interior architecture in architectural conservation and adaptive reuse, and also the role of international organizations in cultural sustainability through international charters, doctrines, and related documents. Considering our second assignment, here we expect an analysis on successful examples of adaptive reuse projects. We gave students some inventory forms as presented here, and it's a teamwork project. So each group of students selects 2 different buildings, one from examples with both external extension and interior interventions, and one with only interior interventions. Yes, Özlem hocam. The learning outcomes in this assignment includes personal observation on values of cultural heritage through case studies. So they go through photographs, architectural drawings, and 3D visuals. Observations on types of interventions to historic buildings through case studies. Critical thinking on cultural heritage, critical thinking on sustainability through continuity of cultural environments, and to learn about international agenda on conservation approaches to historic buildings and environments, conservation and reuse of historical spaces, buildings, areas, and additionally, the role of interior architecture in architectural conservation and adaptive reuse. Following assignment 2, assignment 3 includes another presentation. Here we gave students some key criteria on conservation, and we expect them to discuss 3 different successful examples according to these 9 criteria, which includes minimum intervention criteria, minimal loss of fabric, reversibility, compatibility of new use, explicitness of alteration, honesty and appropriateness of repair and restoration, and also, of course, about sustainability and devise defensible solutions. Following these first 3 assignments, we continue with assignments that are on-site related to measuring measured drawings of historic buildings, vernacular buildings, or sometimes contemporary buildings. Here we expect the students in terms of learning outcomes to have an understanding on the values of cultural heritage through on-site observations, about cultural heritage, about sustainability through continuity of cultural environments with the support of documentation, the role of measured drawings in conservation and reuse of historical spaces, the role of interior architecture in architectural conservation and adaptive reuse, and also measured drawing tools and techniques, architectural measurement tools and techniques. So the skill development includes using measurement tools accurately and making scaled drawings of measured buildings by using methods such as triangulation and datum-line. And we expect them to develop skills on teamwork and site work as well. In terms of abilities, we expect students to develop abilities in achieving accurate orthographical drawings of old or new buildings by measuring tools and measured drawing techniques, and articulating descriptions, analysis, interpretations, and judgments on architectural conservation and adaptive reuse. In terms of developing appreciation and respect for values and attitudes regarding the issues of responsibility in teamwork, heritage values of historical environments, accuracy in measured drawing, and also cultural sustainability issues. So I'm giving the word back to Özlem Hoca to discuss our experiences in different contexts. Thank you, Hoca.
Thank you. In terms of making these on-site assignments, 4 and 5, the students are experiencing different contexts through on-site investigations, which support students' understanding on urban or rural context, or monumental, traditional, or vernacular heritage, or even contemporary context. Some examples we tried to gather here from different years. Martin Engo from Famagusta Walled City is within the urban context, and Chimney House, again, Famagusta Walled City, another example of urban context. And sometimes we take them to rural areas, Yeni Boğaziçi Village, Ayos Sergios Village, a market hall cinema has been measured in this assignment. Same building, other photos. The same village in rural context, a church has been measured by our students. And master building from Walled City Famagusta, another urban example, urban context example. Another rural example from Yeni Boğaziçi Village, the Jeddah Slow Office, which is used by the team there. And from Famagusta Walled City, another example, the marketplace Pandabulia example, which is being used, which is not being used, unfortunately, at the moment. And by these assignments, we also believe that we infused life to these historic buildings. And another experience is the documentation experience on heritage buildings through these on-site measurement practices. And this supports students for spatial interaction in heritage buildings, using measurement tools accurately, and as Hajar Hoca mentioned, teamwork, site work experiences. You can see some examples when our students had the chance of face-to-face education and they were measuring arches or making triangulation on site. Some other examples. And before going to the historic site, in order to understand the logic of measuring, we started the on-site experience from our studios in contemporary environments first, And then we took them to historic buildings. And the documentation experience on heritage buildings also continued by the measured drawing practice, which supports students' ability in making scaled measured drawings of heritage buildings, accuracy of drawings and the importance of this in continuity issues, and again, the teamwork. Some examples can be seen here from Chimney House, sketches of students, measured drawings in scale, plans and sections and elevations. Another church example drawings, some other samples. And the last 3 semesters, as you know, we had an online experience, and this online experience had to support the students to achieve the similar course learning outcomes, but this time through different experiences. They were not able to go out of their houses. They didn't have a chance to get measuring equipment. So we had to create new assignments for them. So they started measuring their furnitures and then their own rooms and other rooms in the living environments, dormitories or their houses. And by using the same triangulation or datum line techniques, they repeated those learning outcomes. Some examples. And because they were not able to go to historic buildings on site, we asked them to have photographs taken from just across an arch, and they have experienced the geometrical methods of arch drawings through photographing. And lastly, the jury experience was done in heritage buildings when we had the chance to, and this also supports the students' understanding of heritage buildings, the continuity issues, spatial interaction, and infusing life to these examples. As I mentioned, one example, a jury done in Bandavulya Marketplace. And these are our references. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, professors. Before giving the word to Cevat Hoca, I would like to remind that we will have ask and answer session at the end of all the presentations. So if you have questions, please note them down or write to the chat box, and at the end of the afternoon session, we will pass to them. Thank you very much, Özlem Hoca, and Hacer Hoca. This is certificate for you. We will you with after the same end. Yes, Cevat Hoca.
Yes, thank you very much again, Professor Dr. Özlem and Associate Professor Dr. Hacer. And thank you very much, Afet Hoca. We are going to invite our second speaker, Professor Dr. Simona Tandelli. She is a full professor of University of Bologna, Department of Architecture, Director of Single Cycle Degree in Architecture and Building Engineering. Hello and welcome, Professor Simona Tandelli. Before she starts, I want to say our little memory. Exactly, I think it was 10 years ago, September 2011, I joined a seminar in Italy, Bologna, when we met each other there. It's our proud to see you here. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here with you, and thank you for inviting me, for remembering that we met in Bologna. I listened with very attention, with a lot of attention, the previous presentation, because I think we are really working on the same topics in the two universities. I will today present one of the projects, European projects that I'm coordinating. My group is based in the University of Bologna. We are urban and regional planners, so we deal with policies mainly. And we are very active at European level, working on many international projects. The most important one, and also related with this seminar here, is Ruritage, which is about how to exploit cultural and natural heritage for sustainable development. So I will try to briefly present you the project, and then I will focus a bit on adaptive reuse, or how we have interpreted it in our project. So just very briefly to give you some information about our project. We started in 2018 in June, so we are in the third year. We have just ended the third year of the project that will end in August 22. This is a very big project. It was funded for 10 million euro. It involved 38 partners from 19 countries in Europe, but not only in Europe. And we were the only one project funded under this topic of rural regeneration. So our consortium, as I said, is quite big. We have 3 typologies of partners involved in the project. The role models, so there are territories, communities that have successfully developed a regeneration process. So they have, through cultural and natural heritage, achieved new economic growth, new sustainability, well-being, and also landscape and heritage conservation. We have 6 replicators that are territories where we have developed a plan for enhancing this process of rural regeneration. So they have learned from the role models, they have used the tools developed within the project, and they are now implementing their strategies. And among the replicators, we have a case study in Turkey, which is Izmir region, where we have 3 partners: the metropolitan area, the university, and an SME, the Mir Energy. And we have also 15 knowledge facilitator partners, that is to say universities, research centers, SMEs, providing knowledge and facilitating this knowledge exchange process among role models and replicators. Why working on rural areas? Why this focus? Because almost one third of the population lives in rural or intermediate areas, and around a bit less of the half of the European gross value added is created in intermediate and predominantly rural areas. Moreover, we also noticed that in rural areas, we have a lot of outstanding examples of cultural and natural heritage. So rural areas are cradles of civilization, all dialects, languages, uses, and craft skills and social practices. So the way we are looking at heritage is not only focusing on tangible heritage, but also on intangible one. At the same time, we have many challenges in rural areas: economic, social, and environmental problems resulting in depopulation, disengagement, reduced service provision, aging, decline of agricultural income, but also loss of biodiversity, landscape, and also in some cases, tangible and intangible cultural and natural heritage is threatened. So our project has the aim of improving the position of rural areas by working with local resources to increase the community resilience, to propose new business models and governance framework, and using policy tools to able to foster economic and social development. The idea is to attract or bring back people in rural areas, mainly young people, to have the possibility to develop new businesses in those areas, to increase the biodiversity, working on cultural and natural heritage in many, many ways. So we work from the reuse and the restoration of historical buildings, but we also deal with the holistic use of rural landscape and biodiversity assets. We also work on the intangible side by rediscovering ancient traditions, arts, and crafts. So what does rural regeneration means to us? We work starting from cultural and natural heritage to develop a new economic growth, a sustainable growth. So the idea is to build revenues, to create new jobs, but also to improve environmental balance, the landscape quality, and to promote sustainable development without forgetting the quality of life. So we work on accessibility, on social inclusion, on sustainable tourism, which is also an important issue. To do this, we have proposed this paradigm, which has defined 6 so-called systemic innovation areas. So they are fields in which we work that together build a holistic approach to rural areas. So we work on pilgrimage, not only religious one, but trails, cultural routes, on agriculture, on local food production, not only from the point of view of agriculture, but also how food can become a sort of marketing strategy for the areas and how to connect rural and urban areas around food. We work on migration and social inclusion. We work on art and festival to promote attractiveness of rural areas. We work on integrated landscape management and also on resilience, working with natural hazards, but also economic and social challenges like COVID, for example. To do this, we have developed in these last 3 years many activities. The first area of activities refers to knowledge building and transfer. So we had a lot of workshops at project level to facilitate this process of learning from the good practices and translating the lessons learned into local context. So we distilled actions, good practices, and also lessons learned that are now available for free on the website. These lessons learned and actions were discussed locally. So the second very important phase of the project is the co-development of regeneration strategies locally, because we start from the idea that there is no way of just transferring one solution from one place to the other, but we have to adapt, to tailor it locally. So we developed more than 30 local workshops involving more than 3,000 people. We developed mentoring and learning visits among role models and replicators, a photo contest to promote the local territories. And we also launched a call for additional replicators that are territories coming from all over the world that just decided to try to use our methods, tools, methodologies that we make them available for free, and they use it with their own resources. We are now in the process of launching a troubadour session, so to collect the memories and experiences from our territories. And we also work on promoting education, capacity building through webinars. So we have a call open for a professional master program that will take place in 2022. And we also will have 2 summer, one summer and one winter school next year. What we produce, the main outputs are the replicators regeneration plans that are also available online. So you can go there and see how our 6 territories decided to promote their sustainable growth locally through the activities that we developed during the project. But what is also interesting to notice is that the role models, so these territories that were chosen because they had this role of being good practices, so to already having developed good practices, decided to further enhance their position, because sustainability is not something that you can say you have reached one forever, but it's a sort of process. You have to work on it, to continuously improve. So also the role models decided to develop plans to improve again their sustainable regeneration. We have developed a brand. We are thinking about what to do after the end of the project, so to build a network and association to continue to interact with rural areas. We have provided the tools that are available on the website. We have an atlas representing the situation, the local cultural and natural heritage. We have a decision support system for other rural areas that would like to follow our path, so they can just go there and see what has been done with reference to some areas of development, to some challenges. We have an open forum for discussing. We have a monitoring and co-monitoring platform where to register the improvements, the impacts that we reach through these regeneration plans. And we also develop tools to engage the community, because one of our main goal was really to make the community acknowledge their local heritage and to make it really become the driver of the sustainable growth of the territories. We are also working at the policy level. We have prepared a vision paper during the COVID first wave of pandemic, trying to provide good practices, but also recommendation for dealing with this sort of situation. And in general, we have seen that there have been challenges for rural areas, but also many opportunities that can be exploited also now. We are working on how to integrate the cultural and natural heritage as a core strategy into the regional smart specialization strategies. And we are going to write a white paper where we will try to really boost the role of cultural and natural heritage as a driver for sustainable development in Europe and beyond. As I said at the beginning, the type of heritage we deal with is very different, diversified. We have tangible heritage, intangible heritage, and also digital heritage. In this last period of lockdown and pandemic, the use of digital heritage has increased quite a lot. And our case studies really deal with all the fields of innovation that I presented before, so pilgrimage, local food, migration, art and festival, resilience, and landscape. But just to go to the focus of the webinar, I would like to present you some approaches to the adaptive reuse in regeneration practices that we have adopted in our case studies. So the first approach is about having a place that should be a place of the community. In this sense, we asked our territories to identify a physical space where to carry on the activity of the project. And what was really successful was the fact that our communities were able to identify places that are sort of symbolic for the community, like a former school in Izmir or a former nursery school in Appignano del Tronto in Italy, so that the community really could have this as a point of reference for discussion about regeneration practices, but not only. So these places are really borrowed to the community to organize training courses, activities, workshops, where the Wi-Fi, for example, is available for free, really to make the people use these sort of spaces. Another example is the use, for what concerns the landscape integrated management, of a diffuse adaptive reuse of built asset. So in rural area, we have this availability of many underused or unused buildings, which is also an opportunity for thinking about new function. And an example, again, from Izmir, is about the possibility, the idea to plan a dispersed hotel from the idea of albergo diffuso, where to promote the availability of rooms in a small village to host tourists, so to promote tourists and to give them an experience which is also an experience of real life, so to engage them really in the community, to make them know the traditional art crafts and traditions of the community. And this is also accompanied by training courses to promote the capacity of the local citizens really to build a business from this. Pilgrimage, of course, give us many opportunities of reusing buildings. In our case of one of our case studies, which is Camino de Santiago, we have seen that there are very important buildings, monuments that can be reused for these purposes, sacred spaces. But also what is interesting to see is that there are a lot of many buildings along the routes that can be reused for restaurants, bars, shops, and so on. So in the case of Camino de Santiago, we have seen how the rural heritage hub, so our core place for the heritage activities, is placed in a monastery, which is also used as a hotel which can also host events. So this multifunction reuse of buildings is really working. For what concerns resilience, of course, the reuse of buildings is one of the main features, because in our case studies, we are working with natural hazards. Appignano del Tronto suffered from the earthquake that was present in Italy in 2016. So there were buildings that were destroyed, but also this resulted also in abandonment by people. So the idea is now how to rethink buildings and also open spaces for making them available for the community. And one of the most important actions that Appignano municipality is developing is the idea of building a sort of hub for resilience, which is a mix of a scientific center, a museum, a place where to learn, really to make it become a sort of full experience for the community, and also for tourists and for visitors. So they have identified an old building. They are now planning how to use it. For example, having a simulator room for the earthquake. What we learned is that the risks should not be hide away, but we should use them to educate, to train people to be prepared. And then we will have a place where to have a sort of educational activities, where to have didactic classrooms. So to have all the different experiences that can be offered. For example, this is what is already present in our in one of our role models, which is in Crete, in Heraklion, where the earthquake simulator, which is hosted in the Natural History Museum, is one of the main attractions of the city. It's the second attraction after the Knossos Palace. So to say how also education can become really a point of interest. And the other one is from Trento, which is a science museum. And then working on art and festival, we also have many other opportunities of reusing buildings and places. And what is interesting, for example, is to see how art performances can take place in spaces that are not thought to be dedicated to this, but how it is possible to have performances in open air or in pubs, in restaurants or in other venues that can really bring people to be more near to art and culture. Another example from Croatia is the Negova Castle, which is an important monument that hosts ceremonies, that hosts a museum, exhibitions, but also, again, our heritage hub, and where the community can find opportunities and inspiration for working on sustainable development. Local food, again, is a very popular case to present, because we have this diffusion in many parts of Europe of agritourism opportunities. So modifying the traditional farm buildings in hospitality buildings, but also what is interesting is this different experiences that some of the partners are presenting, like trying to bring citizens to the countryside to discuss with farmers and to rediscover the power of traditions. And the last example I would like to present is about migration. This example is again in Italy, in Piemonte region. This is an ancient agricultural building that belonged to the church. In 2014, there was an emergency due to the need to host many migrants. So the prefecture of Asti asked to this NGO to help them, and they got this property through a gratuitous loan for hosting about 50 migrants. But what is interesting is that they not only hosted migrants, but also invited them to join courses to learn how to restore the building. So they learned a job. They restored directly the building. They also had then the skills to go and work as employees in other companies, building companies in the area. And they also started many other different activities that are hosted in this building, showing how putting together what is traditional, cultural, and natural heritage, community sense of belonging, but also new cultural inspiration can really boost local growth, sustainable growth, and can also at the same time help to the conservation and the redevelopment of traditional heritage. This is all. You are welcome to ask me questions. I also have put here some references to our project so that you can go there and also find all the materials I've just presented to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Simon Tandeli. It was a great presentation. As we mentioned before, at the end of our webinar, we have ask and answer part. So all the participants, if you have any question, you can write. Our professors will answer your question at the end of the seminar. Thank you again. I want to ask Afateja to invite our third speaker. Yes, please.
Thank you, Javad Hoca. I would like to invite Associated Professor to present ecological principles of traditional houses in the villages of Messaria, Cyprus. Yes, Ege Hoca. You are muted, Ege Hoca.
Yes, you should stop sharing, otherwise I can't share as far as I understood. Yes. I think it's okay now. Hello, everybody. Today I'm gonna make a presentation about a group of buildings in Messaria in Cyprus. These buildings are from different periods. Some of them are earlier, some of them are 50, 60 years old, but they have some peculiar characteristics related with ecological design. So first I want to introduce you Messaria. Messaria is a plain in Cyprus. You can see on map, it's in between two mountains on north and on south. And it's very close to the coast of Famagusta and in between Nicosia and Famagusta. So this area has always been the agricultural area of the island. And because of deforestation, now only grain production is possible here. And this area is the most populous area. The largest towns and villages have been found here. And even in 12th century, we have evidences that many settlements were located within this area. And later on during British period, a railway passed through this area. It was built in 1904 and 1905. And this, let's say, railway was being used for transporting agricultural products, and copper from the, let's say, Troodos Mountains and Lefke to Famagusta port. So the contents of this study, I'm gonna talk about generally the climatic conditions of this area, the production economy and lifestyle, the structure and materials of the buildings in this area, main spatial and architectural components, and the environmentally responsive design features in this area. As the rest of Cyprus, Messaria plain is very hot, especially during summers. It's around 40 Celsius degree, and it's a semi-arid climate. It's very uncomfortable for living, and it prevents the peasants from doing their daily works during daytime. So the hot weather is really important in the design of the residential buildings. And also the rainfall is significantly low. And also this fact has caused the scarcity of water during hot seasons. And it also affected the design of the roofs, which are mostly flat or slightly inclined. And like many other villages, the grain production and animal husbandry were the main economic activities in Messaria villages. And because of these production facilities, the rural building design have been, let's say, developed according to these production facilities. We see that there are big storage spaces for the grains and barns and animals, and also within the premises of the houses. And also we see open spaces like courtyards, especially for dairy production, drying the fruits, vegetables, tarhana, these kind of products. And the main building material is mud brick or adobe. And this was the most available ones, most available material. When you go to the mountainous areas, it differs. We see that on mountains, there are stone masonry buildings in villages, but on the plains, it's all adobe. This was the easiest to produce and cheapest material in the region. And the walls were built on rubble stone foundations, and they supported timber beams on flat mud roofs or slightly light pitch roofs. Stone was much rarely used around doors, windows, surroundings, veranda, and within the, let's say, closed spaces for as supporting arches for the roofs. So when we check the timber, as in many other Mesopotamia villages or Near East villages, we have flat or pitch roofs, and we have timber beams, and it is in the most of the traditional residential buildings all around the pre-modern world. Iron is very rare, only in late period balcony railings. And the walls, masonry walls, mud brick masonry walls are around like 50 centimeters. We see an example from Akdoğan Lisi. This is a more late period rural house from an important village of Messaria, one of the biggest villages in Messaria, Lisi or Akdoğan. And you can see the collapsed roofs, collapsed flat roofs. And we see the timber doors, stone surrounds of stone. As in this case, you see almost all the building has collapsed, but the stone, let's say, surroundings is still there of the timber door. And we see the iron railings of late period houses, balconies. So when we look at the design, we see a room is a modular unit. So, and besides that, there is a very important space which is called hanay. And a room has been used as a modular unit, and it was arrayed in linear order on the ground floor due to increasing demand in early houses with arcaded portico. And if there was an upper story, it was mainly a single room called hanay in Cypriot Turkish. I looked for this word. It has been used in Greek as well, hanay, and in some Anatolian, in some regions in Anatolia. But it's not a very widespread village. It's not like in the terminology of Anatolian houses, mostly. These are very specially designed single rooms, and they were for providing breezy conditions in bedrooms during summer nights. So these are like tower houses with a sleeping room on top, and it has 4 windows on 4 sides, so it catches all the winds. And in this very hot climate, it provides more comfort for the residents of these buildings. And when we look at the orientation of these buildings, we see that they have been placed in the east-west direction. And just like the first presentation about the villages of Eskişehir, these buildings were located on the, let's say, north of the courtyard. And the southern facade was facing the courtyard, while northern facades, which have less openings, have faced the street. So the southern facade was the main facade facing the courtyard and providing the best conditions during winter and during summer. We see that in later periods, the plan organization has become more compact, arcaded porticos disappeared, and central inner hall has been developed. A number of first-story rooms have increased. So there had been an evolution in the houses in this area. And another thing that I should say, again in the first presentation, it was discussed that the central room has been used, let's say, defined as hayat or sofa or salon. In Turkish Cypriot language, it's sündürme, a very specific name again for the central hall in between 2 rooms. So coming to the other main component, which is arcaded portico, veranda, outer hall, or outer sofa. This is the most prominent and characteristic feature of early Messaria village houses. These porticos, which were placed on south, have been life-saving both during summer and winter. The semi-open spaces as a circulation and activity area has been used both for recreational and work-oriented facilities. And this in-between area, it was shady during summer and catching the sunlight during winter. Again, Gülşen Hanım mentioned about similar eaves within the villages of, within the houses of villages of Eskişehir. But in Cyprus, we can say that this is much deeper, this area. And as we say, it has arcades. And the number of the arts has been a way of understanding the wealth of the house owners. So this arcaded portico could be longer or shorter according to the richness of the family. So this space, this arcaded portico, has been like 3 meters deep. And sündürme, as I have just discussed, this is a, let's say, special term in Cyprus. And during Ottoman rule, let's say all the houses were developed like this, a central hall in between 2 rooms. And the hanay on top of the sündürme in some cases, especially the latest ones, sündürme was repeated on first floors with rooms on the sides and mostly with balconies facing the street. And this is a very special, let's say, supporting element, the roof supporting arts. These are believed to be from medieval Lusignan period. These were for the division of large spaces within the building and for supporting the roof. Let's say, yes, we see an example here for this supporting arch, the large arches, which is believed to be from very early periods. And you can see the section and the plan of this house. And yes, another building with this interior arch supporting the roof. And as we said, according to the rain, which was very scarce, there was no need for, let's say, slopy pitched roofs. So the roofs have been very flat or slightly inclined. And it was used during, let's say, summer, when it was flat for drying different, let's say, fruits or other things like tarhana. And also these flat roofs had the mud roofing on top, while on pitch roofs, terracotta tiles have been used. We can see a detail of these roof structures and flat mud roofs, and also these slightly, let's say, sloped pitch roofs. Yes, and there are courtyards, but the courtyard borders are not very well defined as they are in cities. They were more loose. But in general, it can be easily stated that these courtyards, besides accommodating service, WCs, wells, ovens, storage rooms, and most of the daily activities were going on there. And also all the agricultural production activities. So after understanding all these details about their structure and materials, what we see about the environmentally responsive design features, first of all, the mud brick walls are very thick, like around 50 centimeters. And as it is discussed in the previous presentations, the mud plaster and mud brick have very good insulation capacity. So that's something that really protects from cold and hot weather. There are wooden shutters, which is also good in insulation, and a semi-open A1 type sündürmes on south, and it creates a cooling effect, especially when it's open on one side. And south-oriented arcaded porticos providing shade during summer when the sun is high and sunlight when the sun is low. And we have openings on west, letting the western wind, which is the prevailing wind in the area during summer. Few and small openings on north, preventing cold weather during winter. But also, there are two, let's say, side windows that provides the ventilation. I'll come at the G. And mud flat roofs with high insulation capacity, high spaces on top, open on all sides, so no preventions of wind during night for a comfortable sleep. Ventilation holes under roof eaves and on both sides of the rooms for ventilation through south-north axis. It was also mentioned in the first presentation, and it was, I think, described as Poyraz deliği. So we see these let's say, holes, both in between the arches of the portico and also on both sides of the walls. So they provide ventilation for the portico and for the interiors. Yes, we see one of the holes here on the left in between the arches. And when you go behind and see that wall behind, you can see another hole on top, just just below the roof. And when it's below the roof, you know, the hot, let's say, air goes up. So the hottest air is under the roof. And when you provide these ventilation holes, they help you to move the hot weather out of the building. So we see the sündürme, like A1, open to the courtyard on the south for ventilation in summer. This is a typology showing how these, let's say, modules have been developed. On left, it's the earlier period arcaded buildings, and on the right, it's later period ones, and you can see the sündürme design in the center. There can be either one rooms on both sides or two rooms. And sometimes when it's two-story, in some later examples, we see the sündürme repeating on the top. So here we see the arcaded portico with the holes in between the arcs. And we can see how two-sided windows are there for ventilation through south and north. And here we can see again some examples of these arcaded porticos with the holes in between arcs. And this is the later period houses with the simplest form, with the sündürme in the center. And this is again a late period example. And on top of sündürme, there are hanais as well, as a single space on top. And you can see that it has 4 windows on 4 sides. And because nothing is blocking the ventilation, these tower, let's say, houses are very comfortable for a night breeze. And sometimes you see that it's repeating. It's like a modular unit repeating one after another. And we see an example of that, again from Lisi. And very late period, we see that this hanay on top of sündürme also became a central hall and had 2 rooms on sides. I think when the, let's say in later periods, the village started to be more crowded, and this type, which is more like affected by more Western styles, developed in villages and in some cities. Also in Famagusta, we have some similar types. Thank you very much for your time. I hope it was also contributing to understanding the, let's say, traditional rural buildings, special design, responding to the environmental conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ege Hoca, for this valuable presentation. Thank you very much. Yes, Devat Hoca.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Ege. I want to share your certificate and thank you, which will be signed by our faculty dean. Here is your certification. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We prepared something like this, and after the seminar, we will be signed and send an email to you. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm going to invite our next speaker, Professor Mauro Salvini, who is Professor of Sapienza University Roma and President of Culture to All. If you are here, we'll be thankful to start your presentations, Professor Mauro.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. So I have some slides here, and let's. Before that, I started, there are very few slides which I collected and I prepared for this very interesting webinar. I want to spend a few words about the title of the presentation, which is reality of the sustainability. Why this title? Because the timer starts. Because sometimes the sustainability, and I think that you share my point, is only a dream. It is not a reality. Because it's very difficult to achieve sustainability. And sometimes there is the point that we aim to sustainability, but we difficultly achieve it. Or sometimes, and this is the worst, I mean, we have the illusion to catch the sustainability, to ensure sustainability in settlements, in housing, in plans, in planning, in cities, in settlements, and so on. And this is really the worst situation, because the sustainability is considered to be achieved, but into reality is not. So I want to share with you, and now I will, let me see how to manage.
You will push share screen.
Yes. I will just 1 minute, and I will, presentation should be here. Okay. And probably if I do like this, okay, wait a minute. I think that is okay. You see it?
No, you should put share screen, and then you push share, then we can see your screen.
Wait a minute.
Exactly in the middle down, there is a green part. It's right, written share.
Yeah. This is share, and
yes, we can see now.
Very good. Now it's a little bit tricky, but any system has a different system, has a different procedure. And now I will do presentation. Wait a minute, and now maybe you can see it.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, fine. Good news is that there are very small, very few slides. So it's simple to manage. Okay, so the first point is that the sustainability. Let's agree on some points, on some main characteristics of the sustainability. Sustainability is a complex issue, and we should have in mind that it has been recently highlighted and considered, especially starting from the political, from the social, and last by the technical contest. As you know, probably in the morning you addressed this issue. Sustainability has been addressed by United Nations since, let's say, during the end of the 70s, 80s of last century, of previous century. So it's a quite young issue, and topic in science and in technology. Until 2 centuries ago, the sustainability clearly was not addressed because there was not a problem of to consider a sustainable environment in an environment which was not fully settled, fully inurbated, fully with a great urbanization, and of course with a great impact of human being on the nature. The sustainability is depends very much on the context. This is very important to bear in mind because in different contexts, sustainability has different meanings. And we have to pay much attention, very much attention to analyze the context in the beginning in order not to aim to any false, not true sustainability. It has also a very flexible and elastic definition. So you generally starting a project, we define the sustainability, but of course, this definition can be tailored to specific needs, and this is quite important. I mean, is not a definition something like a mathematical definition. Is perfect for us, for planners, for engineers, for architects, because sustainability is demanding very much our effort in design, in invention, in considering solutions, you know, in putting into reality the analysis and the solution which we are able to design. But there is a but, is difficult to achieve. And this is the reason why just also today, even today, I want to address this point of the difficulty to fully achieve the sustainability. And the last but not least, in this note, we have to be very modest, and we have to be very conscious that to work with and for the sustainability, we have to pay a lot of attention to how this sustainability can be really put into reality. Wait a minute, I don't know why the slide is not going. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, if we look for a definition of sustainability, I think that we can agree on this definition, which is highlighting some specific points. Sustainability can be considered in the environmental and economic sciences. And please note that we are not speaking about only environmental sciences, but we are speaking also and considering economic sciences, and of course the social aspects of the economic sciences as the condition which is ensuring that a development, so we are speaking about developing something. Sustainability is as this concept of the development inside. So is the modification for a specific settlement, for a specific city or building or area and so on, ensuring the satisfaction of the needs of the present generation without compromising the possibility of future generations to realize their own. So please consider that we are not speaking about the present, but we are speaking also about the future generations. And this is a quite really important because in this case, the effort of design and of designers must have also a vision for the future. Okay, so this is quite important. This is a challenging point for the design, more than satisfy only the needs by the time being of the generation of the people who are using the solution which we as the designers can provide. You really note that the definition is a human being centered definition. So in this sense, sustainability defined as it was in the previous lines was mainly considering the human being and less considering the nature. And this is the reason why sustainability can be light and can be strong. If we say the sustainability should be or is slight, we are trying to replace the natural capital in our project, in our design. If we support the strong sustainability, we are aiming to maintain constant the natural capital. This is a very important distinction which is affecting very much the design that we are producing. Because is addressing a very important question. The human settlements, cities, dwellings, houses, areas can be replaced or should be replaced and modified, and how much should be this replacement, this modification, which we as a designer, which the designer is asked to do in the specific area, in the specific city, in the specific landscape. And how to do that? This is a really important issue which must be addressed. Now, if my mouse is not being crazy, we can see okay. Just 4 examples, because I don't want to offend anyone, in the world. I was catching 4 Italian examples, 4 Italian situations, but I should say also pitfalls, also situation where the sustainability is not achieved, or there is a very dangerous situation for the present situation of this urban or environmental contest. Let's speak about the big ships, going into the canals of Venice. I mean, the situation over there is dramatic. Every time that the big ship is entering in Venice, like you can see in the upper left picture, is really Venice is having a very terrible, dangerous, and the risk is very high. So over there, which is the point, which is the pitfall, which is the problem? The negative problem are the regulations. Regulations are not sustainable because the impact is not considered, and so is administrative or legal sustainability is not achieved. Let's go down to the left bottom slide. Many of you have heard about, sorry, we're a little bit late, but in a few minutes I will close my presentation. Difficult to achieve is the sustainability in this what is called the green skyscraper. Beautiful realization. I fully support that. In Milano, by architect Boeri, a person which I know personally, is very nice guy, very interesting designer. But if you consider how much is the financial sustainability of that building, you should say that the sustainability of financial management of that building is only for very rich people, very rich dwellers, very rich users. So this kind of sustainability can be applied only in utopic society where people are very, very wealthy and they are not struggling day by day for money or for salary. So please, let us consider also the financial sustainability. But let's go to the right-hand side and see what in Rome is going on during these days about the cycling paths that the administration is just cutting the road and taking out some portion of the vehicular of the road for vehicles and giving that space to the cycle, to the cycle paths. That is absolutely great in terms of privileging, of giving opportunities to people who like to go by bicycle. But of course, this is very much taking a lot of space from the vehicular road for cars, and that space will not come back to the roads, and this is terrible. This is very, very dangerous because the traffic will be more chaotic, because cars will be stuck inside the traffic jams, because the pollution will increase, because the consideration of the history of the city, of how the roads have been built before for vehicular, for car traffic, has not been carefully considered in doing the paths for bicycles. The last one is this. Let us start from this point, and I will close with this point in the top. There are no recipe that are suitable in all places for all cultures. And I'm very so happy to participate in this webinar where I've seen different cultures, even if in the Mediterranean basin, you know, but just different cultures, you know, going together and sharing their consideration about sustainability. But so the most advised recipe for sustainability, in my mind, is rooted on 4 points: investigation and analysis, because this is a fundamental point; the study of the historical, environmental, and the functional situation of the subject of the design, of the conservation, of the building, the design itself, which should have a very clear reference points, and last but not least, a great attention, a very important attention to management and operation, not only immediately after the realization of the building of the project, of the plan, but also in the future, according to what we have defined before about the definition of the sustainability, aiming to give the solution to the future generations. So this is my last sentence, last sentence in this presentation. Please, I would be very happy if in our exercises in the future, in our design, we can respect very much the tradition, the rituals of the cultures, and by this way, I'm sure that we can have a more sustainable sustainability. Last but not least, I want to just to give you this reference. Is a very nice reference about utopia. This is a project of last century, I guess middle of the 60s, about the walking city, about the settlement, and about how the architects aiming to utopia can give some ideas on which is nice to reflect. Thank you very much, and all the best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mauro Salomini. It was our proud to have you among us for this great presentation. As I mentioned before, we will have ask and answer part. We'll be thankful to stay up to the end of seminar. I am going to ask Professor Offit to invite the next speaker. Offit Hoca. I think Offit Hoca's internet maybe have some problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Hoca, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to invite now Associated Professor Dr. Harun Sevinç from Eastern Mediterranean University. He is going to present us integrating contemporary solar and daylighting techniques in historic buildings in Lefkoşa and Gazi Mausa. Yes, Harun Hoca.
Hello. I had interruption in my connection. I don't know the reasons. Can you see my, can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. It's my first time that I work with Zoom. Okay. So I hope it is visible.
Yes, yes, it's okay.
Full screen, I need full screen, okay. So my topic is about integrating contemporary solar and daylighting techniques in historic buildings in Lefkoşa and Gazi Mausa, Nicosia and Famagusta. I will give you a brief history about, I don't know, how can I get, sorry, I have a menu, about my passive utilization to smart architecture. Le Corbusier, the founder of modernism, in his book La Maison des Hommes, the house of the human, said the sun provides the human being with vitamin D he needs, negative impact on skin and buildings, and at the same time, it's an energy source. We used passive solar, building down of passive solar energy gain in traditional architecture, in vernacular architecture in different countries. This is an example from Tunisia, where heating and cooling was adopted by passive solar building design. Different civilizations, cultures, Egyptians, Greeks, ancient Greeks, Persians, Hindus, and all they considered the climate in their design approach, such as sun and wind. Fully developed solar architecture urban planning methods were first employed by Greeks and Chinese because they oriented their buildings towards the south to provide light and warmth. Socrates, the Greek father of philosophy, known for his interest in questioning, was also a careful observer of the sun's movement. He developed the first solar house, Megaron house, which is an example of first passive solar energy use described by Socrates. He was stating that, doesn't the sun shine into houses facing south in winter, whereas in summer the sun wanders over us at the roof so that we have shade? You will see here, north direction open, south direction is opening to the sun, different solar altitude, sun position, sun, lower sun is in winter, higher sun. So we have these sun controlled daylight. Then this buffer storage area is in the north part, and we have these thermal mass as buildings. There's a clear definition of sun based on the orientations. Wall and ceilings, as I mentioned, have a high thermal storage capacity. Roof overhang is served as sun control element. This is the first archetypical characteristics of solar architecture. So what is the timeless principles of solar architecture based on these housing concept is we should minimize the surface. We should open towards the sun, especially in winter. We should have solar zoning, cool rooms on the north side, warm rooms on the south side, selective shading, protection against high solar altitude in summer. We should use the storage masses of exterior walls and roofs for temperature compensation. Until the Industrial Revolution, glass was used and steel was used as at that time as a construction material because after Industrial Revolution in the big cities like London, Berlin, Paris, we had big problems with light and with hygienic issues, and they tried to adopt this sun into the interior spaces. The cradle of the early of 20th century, artists and architects of glass chain, so-called Gläserne Kette in German, developed crystalline structures as ideal models and designed environments for the dark and against dark and hygienic cities that were caused by industrial revolution until, unfortunately, 1930s, at the beginning of the National Socialist Nazi regime. It was stopped at the time, and they developed autonomous outcomes in terms of supply possibility. The Nazi regime brought these steps to the end. Their credo was transparency, light, air, and sun. After the Second World War, of course, there was a new construction of cities and housing. People need accommodation. We ignored these passive solar energy, or we based our heating, cooling, lighting demand based on fossil fuels. Club of Rome, 1972, said, let's return to traditional building forms, the use of natural materials, renewable energy resources, solar energy, and we should have an intelligent use. Solar energy from that time remained a constitutive movement. Until the energy crisis 1973, after the Yom Kippur War between Israel and the Arabic countries, the warning of Club of Rome became a reality. The Western world understood that they are depending on fossil fuels and they should shift to renewable energy sources. So let's come to our location in Cyprus. Cyprus is an island in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, divided into two parts. The Turkish part is the north, administered by Turkish Cypriots. South part is by the South Greek Cypriot, administered by Greek. And then we have this buffer zone, which is controlled by United Nations, and 3% of the island is administered by, or is the territory of the British sovereign base areas. So if we look to the solar energy potential of Cyprus, we can see that, for instance, our case study areas, Nicosia and Famagusta, have a high solar energy potential because of these high solar radiation values, approximately 1,935 kilowatt hour each square meter. So we can benefit from the renewable energy source sun very well. So we developed in our graduate course, elective course, Arch 577, solar architecture. We try to adopt let's analyze the historical buildings. These buildings are converted churches, which were converted to mosque during the Ottoman period, and the ability for energetic adaptation. St. Sophia Cathedral in Nicosia, today is called Selimiye Mosque, or Bedesten, Old St. Nicholas Church, or the Cathedral of St. Nicholas in Famagusta. Today is the landmark of our whole city in Famagusta, Lala Mustafa Pasha Mosque. If we look to the location of Selimiye Mosque and Bedesten Nicosia, it's in the walled city of Nicosia. We can see the sun pass diagram, which starts from the east to west. It is important to check exactly how the sun pass is developed, because we should find out if it is. This is the location of Lala Mustafa Pasha Mosque in the walled city of Famagusta in the eastern part of the island. Lala Mustafa Pasha Mosque is here again in the center, beside the St. Peter's Paul's Cathedral. So what is the problem statement is the lack of the application of sustainable means of energy consumption in historic buildings. We are trying to shift, because of these sustainability issues, to renewable energy sources. If we continue like the fossil fuels, of course, the carbon dioxide emissions are increasing. So we should get rid of these fossil fuels and let's move to solar, wind, and other renewable energy sources. So the main aim of the study is to analyze historic buildings according to solar radiation, because we need this sun pass diagram, and daylighting principles. We are trying to evaluate the amount of solar radiation during different seasons, winter and summer. We are trying to evaluate the current conditions for human comfort in the building. We are trying to propose contemporary solutions to meet the energy demands of the building by minimizing non-renewable energy sources. Students use the following methods to carry out the research: documentary study, observation is very important, And of course, for visualization or simulation, AutoCAD, SketchUp, Photoshop, Lumion, Ecotech, at that time in 2016, it was available, Daylight, Visualizer, and Sephira. So following research questions were evaluated: how much solar radiation penetrates into the interior space of the historic buildings in different seasons of the year? What are the current conditions for human comfort? Which contemporary solutions can be applied in historic buildings under preservation orders? This is very important because it's a sensitive issue to work with historic buildings. There are preservation orders to meet its energy demands as to reduce the reliance on non-renewable sources. How can we apply these solar technology on the historic building without interpreting too much the preservation orders? So this is a plan of the Selimiye Mosque in Lefkoşa in Nicosia, 3D drawings which were developed by the students. You can see it's a Gothic building built in the Byzantine and Venetian time period. So the main concern of the observation of students was heating winter is, if you ask the secrets, they will tell you, okay, we have only 2 months, winter time, high heat storage capacity of the exterior walls is working as thermal mass, so we have no high heating demand, but cooling in summer is a big problem. We need solar ornaments of the windows are blocking the high amount. I will show you some photos. Ventilation can be boosted by roof hang fans and by cross ventilation. Electricity needed for this will be provided by PVs. Lighting problem is eliminating the huge consumption for interior lighting because in daytime they are using the lighting. You can see here it's open, it's switched on daytime, and these ornaments are blocking the entrance of my English. The entrance, the interior space into the interior space, penetration of solar daylight into the interior spaces. This is outside, and of course these evergreen trees should warm up the thermal mass exterior walls. But if they are evergreen, they can go. Maybe we can replace them with deciduous trees. Let's go to the possible roof areas. How can we apply for the lighting issues and for cooling PV applications, solar panels on the roof? These are some parts. We should be very careful because I'm not sure what are the preservation rules. How can we adapt? Because there should be a coordination between the conservation, historical conservation issues, because we are trying to integrate these on the roofs. Let's move to the Bedestan. Bedestan was developed in many centuries in different areas. He made a facade analysis of different orientations. Spatially, we tried to measure the openings of area openings of the windows and the total surface areas. South facade, northern facade, or eastern facade, western facade. What are the benefits? What is lacking? How can we, is there any daylight problem, or can we cool the spaces? These are the roof areas. So we made different sun pass diagram for summer and winter solstices, 21st of June and 21st of December. You see how low is the income. So we are trying to show in the interspace about daylighting issues. This is about the equinox, 21st of March, 21st of September. Economically, we found out that the thick walls, stone walls, approximately 40 till 50 centimeter is a good thermoregulator. During summer, there is a high cooling demand, while in summer, winter heating is high. Heating is augmented with the use of gas heaters. You can see this. Cooling, no artificial cooling system exists in this building. Insulation is all provided within the building. Shading, timber element used as shading, ventilation is sufficient. So then we check the natural daylight, which penetrates through the openings, mainly on the south and western facade. The glass arches on the south facade, and also on the western and south are the main source of daylight. Towards the east, there is a limited natural light. So this is the situation. Daylight factor is the unit that we are going to measure. You see these window areas, we have more than 8. And these areas are sometimes lacking with daylight, especially in June and December, because the solar inclination is low, so we have more benefit for passive solar energy gain in winter and daylight. So a simulation was also done for equinox time. So these are some suggestions for the case study. Evacuated tube collectors can be adopted, PV cells on the roof, activated core heating under the floorboards, shading for south glass facade by using self-shading glass, shading for the south glass facade by natural vegetation, automatic control for controlled ventilation. So our last case study is in London in Famagusta. This is the main entrance of the last guide. It's another good building with edit of minaret. This is the sun pass diagram. So if we check the daylight analysis of the London mosque, there is an average of daylight factor between 3.20 to 4%. According to the analysis, the amount of daylight is less than under 5. So we need, consequently, artificial lighting is required. And possible roof areas for PV application without endangering the aesthetic quality of the cultural heritage. I think this is just a suggestion. I'm not suggesting to adopt this like this. Of course, I mentioned there must be a coordination between these conservation institute here in Cyprus. So adopt this solar technology. So our conclusion, adaptation of solar technology is a big challenge for the historic buildings in Northern Cyprus by considering very important preservation orders. It is the fact that installation of most of this technology is quite expensive, but in the long run, the benefits outweigh the initial costs. Using this technology will passive means of heating, cooling, lighting will indeed contribute in helping the country as a whole towards a more sustainable direction in its development. These are some references. I have one Italian reference, which was developed for St. Nicholas Church in Nicosia. And thanks for the students who supported. We had an international master's and PhD students who work on this project. Thank you for listening, and I would be glad if you can ask me questions, and welcome to the Solar Age. Thank you. I think I finished on time.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Harun Hoca. Thank you very much.
Okay. Shall I close now my sharing?
Yes, you can stop sharing.
Yes, yes, please. Thank you.
It's so difficult. It's my first time that I use this. One moment. How can I stop this? Stop share. Okay. So that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Harun. For all speakers, as I said, we had a certificate like this after the webinar. The Dean of Faculty of Architecture, both universities will sign, and we will email them to you. Thank you very much again for your great presentations.
Thank you.
We are going to invite our next speaker, Dr. Syed Ahmed Reza Yakanifer, Assistant Professor in Urban Planning, Eskişehir Technical University. He was also head of master and PhD programs in Islamic Azad University in Dubai branch, and his research fields in sustainability, and his books and articles are in this case. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Yakanifer. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ilaji. Just now, with your permission, I share the screen just now. Yes. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, please.
This is my today's speech. It's about cultural ecotechnology with emphasis on Iranian traditional architecture. Yes. Okay. Yes, in traditional ecotechnology or cultural ecotechnology, we have three interrelated and interwoven paradigm that all of them is en route of sustainability. And as you can see here, we have these three interrelated paradigm. The first one is ecocultural vision. The second one is ecotech vision. And the third one is cultural ecotechnology vision that our most emphasis is on the third one, cultural technology vision, that we focus on it about the traditional architecture in Iran as well. Yes, taking the most of tradition and modernity, ecoculture suggests the following focuses. The first focus is on ecocultural tradition for ecocultural modernity. And the second one is ecocultural modernity for new ecocultural traditions. The first one means we can take into account the importance of local human cultures in the nature preservation. And secondly, to promote their architectural inheritances, which shows us useful patterns and features for new design. It means we can inspire from the ecocultural tradition for new design or in new design, especially for making green building as a reality that today is also we can apply it. And in second one, ecocultural modernity for new ecocultural traditions, we try to develop ecology and nature awareness. And we are also try to taking time to carry out holistic field studies and local climatic data analysis for designing through bioclimatic and green building projects, and also participating in the creation of new forms of modern ecocultural traditions. It means in the second case, we mostly emphasize on the thoughts and on the theories of ecocultural modernity and applying it in green building projects or in the modern projects that we want to use from ecocultural traditions. Ecocultural vision has its own characteristic. If we want to mention the characteristic of ecocultural vision, we can say that ecoculture is not as the same of traditional culture, but it provides countless examples of cultures of living in harmony with nature. In addition, ecoculture is timeless. It means that it is not dependent to any time area. It means any form of human culture that may demonstrate a strong ability to protect nature is acceptable. And ecoculture invites us to preserve its material as well as immaterial legacy. It means it depends on also to the physics and also material of the buildings, and also it could be immaterial. In particular, it is environmentally friendly built heritage and it also contributes to ecosystem conservation efforts, that it could be, for example, non-physical, and could be some of the, for example, behavior according to the conservation of the ecosystem and environment, and environment friendly actions and so on. As you can see in this schematic figure also, we have ecocultural sustainability. Ecocultural sustainability has four main category or main subcategory, that is cultural aspect, environmental aspect, social aspect, and economic aspect. And it shows us that each of them also consist some of the criteria that should be available to reach to, for example, cultural aspect, environmental aspect, and so on. For example, for the environmental aspect, we can see that we have indoor environment quality, outdoor environment quality, that brings for us environmental aspects in the context of ecocultural sustainability. And as you know, and also you will see in the last slides, different cultures have different, for example, way of confronting with ecosystems and with the environment. And as you will see in also in traditional houses of Iran, also we can see later that indoor environment quality and outdoor environment quality is exactly could be maintained according to the or through the ecocultural sustainability and so on. Or for example, economic aspects, as you can see, can consist from affordability and affordable dwelling, or for example, operating and maintenance costs and so on. And this figure can show us that how conceptual framework of relationship between ecocultural design, main indicators and categories of an ecocultural design can be worked. The first person that talked about ecocultural design was Abel. Abel emphasized that a cultural approach to sustainability is based on climate, culture, and context, and mainly the definition of ecocultural design is the physical interpretation of the culture of a region based on ecological principles that are economically viable. It means any kind of physical interpretation in the context of culture in any specific geographic region could also be economically viable, and also help that we can have the projects or the, for example, plannings or policy makings that is according to the ecological principles that is also economically viable. Ecocultural architecture thus requires a hybrid mix of local culture, material and resources, and combined with modern ideas and technologies. It needs, for example, the culture that you have in your area, geographic area, material and the resources that are here and is available, and the combined and a combination of them with modern ideas and technologies that could bring for us the new and modern sustainable ecocultural technology that we will see later also. An ecocultural approach also highlights the sustainability lessons of vernacular architecture. Accordingly, an ecocultural logic in architecture calls for the examination and reuse of lessons from vernacular architecture as a base for sociocultural integration. The next paradigm that I talked about in the first slide is ecotech vision. Ecotech vision is a step further from the ecoculture that we talk about. Eco-technology was raised in 1990 after the influence of our common future report. And ecotech architecture can be used as an effective strategy to minimize energy consumption and enhance the satisfaction of construction industry beneficiaries in the Middle East specifically. Ecotech strategy focuses on using compatible forms and materials to cultural appearance, prevalent traditions in any locality, respecting to natural environment, use of renewable energy resources, energy efficiency, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And as you can see, it is a kind of ecological and technological strategies that together bring for us the preservation of the environment and creating an environment-friendly environment. And also they are more according to the climatological and also what we can say, the energy usage, energy efficiency, and ecological footprint, and so on. And then and then finally we add the culture to ecotech also. We have cultural ecotechnology, that it is the thing that we emphasize on it. And we have also in traditional buildings in Iran that we will show you in next slides. Cultural ecotechnology vision, that is the main topic that we want to emphasize on it, is the vision that trying to find how technology and ecology were influenced by Iranian culture and how come together in contemporary architecture. I should clarify one point here, that because we talk about Iran and Iranian architecture, we bring the examples and samples from Iranian architecture and Iranian traditional buildings, but it could be found in any places in the world, in Latin America, in another part of Middle East, in Africa, and so on, and maybe in Europe and everywhere, that we have a dependency and, for example, integration between the technology vision and culture in that area. And it is not merely dependent to Iran culture and so on. But as I told you, the reason that we emphasize in Iran is that we want to show it in the traditional building in our country. Architecture is a social subject which is in close contact with culture, and when we add the culture to the architecture, the architecture will be sociable, and it could be a kind of architecture that serve the people, and it is a kind of architecture that could solve ecological problems with technologies that reflect social, historical, and cultural indicator, and it is not, for example, separate from another part of the sustainability, that is social sustainability, cultural sustainability, and so on, because we can see that we have sustainability in some of the Gulf region countries or Persian Gulf region countries, but we don't have any cultural and social sustainability, and it is very important. And as you see also the very famous paper of Peter Marcus, you can see that he says that sustainability is not enough, and also it was in the presentation of Professor Mauro that how we can interpret sustainability and what is the reality of sustainability and so on. Iranian traditional architecture, according to eco-technology in a cultural context, have 7 fundamental characteristics that are introversion, structure, homogeneous properties, anthropomorphism, symmetry and anti-symmetry, and minimalism. All of 5 principles of traditional architecture of all of 7 sorry for the mistake. All of 7 principles of traditional architecture of Iran were adapted with principle of sustainable architecture, as you will see here. For example, if we talk about the environmental sustainability, introversion, and autonomy, that are 2 characteristic of the traditional architecture of Iran could be seen. And if we talk about the society, you can see again we have human conformity and also introversion. And also if we have about the economy, you can see that we have autonomy and we have also modulation and structure, and it shows that different kind of sustainability are in relation with some of the traditional Iranian architecture that Professor Pirnia mentioned before. For example, the principles of autonomy, structure, and modulation, and purposefulness included in the category of economy. The principle of introversion and autonomy were reflected by the environment, and the principle of human conformity as well. Introversion were included in the social issue category, and so on. Iranians believe as a sign of sanctity of personal life and prominence of the privacy, while and hierarchy in the Iranian architecture, and is not specific to a particular climate or function. It means that all of these 7 traditional architectural principles could be used and could be applied and could be seen in different part of Iran in different climatological conditions. Let me to skip this too. And cultural indicators in Iranian lifestyle is also important. Contentment, diligence, providence, privacy, self-respect, generosity, and spirituality is also very important as cultural indicators in Iranian lifestyle. And for example, if you have a look to the, for example, some elements of Iranian traditional buildings, you can see that, for example, we have self-respect or we have privacy in Orosi or in the Bahchechal and so on, or for example, in the indoor and outdoor sections of the houses that we have in the Iranian traditional buildings and so on. For example, contentment and diligence can bring for us, convert threats into opportunities. For example, we can bring bring introversion in architecture and also contemplating in all aspects of life through, for example, self-respect and spirituality and so on. Cultural indicators in Iranian life cycle, as I told you, are contentment and diligence that convert threats into opportunities, contentment and providence that making a responsive architecture for present and future, privacy and self-respect make introversion in architecture, and generosity and spirituality create a sense of paradise in architecture, and privacy and spirituality contemplating God in all aspects of life. And if you can see with integrating these indicators in different ways, you can bring different elements and add different elements to our traditional Iranian buildings according to the culture and according to the, for example, sense of feeling or identity of the traditional Iranian building and so on, that it is a very comprehensive debate that we cannot go through it in this PowerPoint. Yes, most important lessons and experiences of characteristic of Iranian traditional architecture is that Iranian traditional architecture in each region and climate possess specified features that influence cultural context that also Dr. Iraji mentioned in his presentation. Cultural indicators are expressed in different forms of architecture and often derived from the everyday lifestyle of people. With respect to climate and environment considerations, Persian architecture dealing with people's activities and design the architectural elements in different ways. And Persian architecture has different effects on people's life, and the goal of designing spaces, as I told you, in different climatological region of Iran and also cultural region of Iran, because as you know, in Iran, we have too many different cultures with different ideas and different behaviors and different beliefs, and also when it adds to different climatological regions and different materials and different way of building that is in that part of the country of us, you have no way to completely respect to the cultural eco-technology that in one shoot you have all of the materials or elements that you have need for any kind of construction in that area. Yes, I skip from this and also go to some of the samples of architectural elements that we have in Iran. For example, wind catcher or badgir, as we say in Persian language, that is it could, for example, solve the problem of heating in the...
Dr. Yakanif, I'm sorry for interrupting you. You have 3 minutes for your presentation.
Okay. Just now I finished my speech. To circulate the heating, and you are, I think, familiar with this kind of technology that we have. And also Godal Bahçe, that it is in the middle of the traditional houses that help to control the extremes of cold and heat in the Iranian houses, and also courtyard that is in the middle of the houses in the central part, and it could also moderate the harsh of winter weather and also the hotness of summer weather and so on. And also Orosi, that is some kind of windows and pencere that we have, and it is built with different glasses in different colors and also with different shapes, and it has also the it can also have the duty of reducing sun radiation, ventilation, and making the interior space nicer, and also some times for absorbing some of the insects from entering the house and so on. And the last one is Shibak, that is the some, for example, designed and, for example, handicraft windows that we have in our traditional houses. This was my presentation, and as a conclusion, we can say that Ecotech Vision is a pure scientific view that we can see it in Iranian ancient architecture. Ecotech is literally a reverse to the past based on today's science and technology. The producer of Iranian past architecture believed that making a perfect environment for human being lives is essential, and assessing Iranian architecture history demonstrates its constant development and growth. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Dr. Ilkanifav, and thanks everyone for staying with us. We are going to have the last presentation, and Afatuja is going to introduce the last speaker. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you, Jawad Hoja.
1 minute,
Our last...
I wanted to share Dr. Ilkanifav's also certificate, because these are very important. And here is Dr. Ilkanifav. Thank you very much. We will sign them and email you later. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you, Jawad Hoja. Our last speaker is Professor Dr. Kokan Grechev from Eastern Mediterranean University. He's going to make his speech about vernacular versatilities, discussing identities. Yes, Kokan Hoja, please.
Thank you very much. This is a wonderful opportunity to share our common experiences and varieties of field. And I'm very happy that today we opened different aspects and different perspectives of the problems. So the reason why I decided to talk about identities and vernacular versatility, so-called, is that I just want to share with you not the visual vocabulary that we are following while tracing traditional architecture, but sharing the perspective of how these attitudes are changing through time and how globalization as a process has influenced how we perceive things that we're seeing differently in front of us, let's say few years or decades ago or so. What am I going to talk about is about some classification of architectural, let's say, heritage representing traditional architecture of the Republic of North Macedonia. And the reason why I'm going to talk about them is that searching for the sustainability definitions, I participated many national, international projects, massive projects of World Bank about developing communities through culture, where culture and vernacular was about, and the sustainability achievement through programs, initiatives, actions was aiming to some particular preservation of substantial, let's say, resources or data. And so this production in this country, in this small Balkan country of ours, is interesting because, as you can see, the general position is somehow in the crossroads of the Balkans, which means cultural crossroads also. So there are many problems that we need to face throughout this experiencing of the versatilities, let's say, of those expressions, because if we go inside, we are going to find local values. We'll discover Mediterranean experiences, analytical redefinitions of Oriental experiences. Then we will touch the European style complex, and then we will come to a specific regional architectural expression. And so the problem is that we have to trace a huge amount of anonymous experiences, of anonymous architectural practices and touches, which is based in the foundations of this traditional vernacular definitions and its theoretical and practical determinants. It's not easy, do believe me, to make a classification of this huge matter, but as I mentioned at the beginning, it's the importance of the perspective from today. So seeing from today, the sustainability really has often been a fundamental part of the composition of both tangible and intangible cultural resources, first of all. So that's why, and sustainability and preservation of cultural identity are complementary. So as we can see, the keywords are kind of changing throughout time. We were not talking about cultural identity previously. We were so simple going on the field visit, then measuring these buildings, drawing and collecting data about them. But then came those huge, interesting projects in which, you know, international institutions with all good intentions wanted to jump inside and massively develop those passive communities, trying to impose their own understanding of culture and so. But, you know, wherever we would like to apply any kind of research here, we are going to be pressed to conclude that the elements of sustainable design are really integral to the vernacular architecture. And another keywords jumping in are the natural and cultural environment that are creating optimum relationships between people and their places. However, cultural values and cultural identity are both contributing to this active, let's say, perception of today's understanding of all this phenomenon. Because yes, we will agree, and we heard it several times today, that culture is an essential component of sustainable development. But on the other side, culture represents source of identity. And that is really something that refers later on to building social inclusion, providing economic growth, and so far and so far. But what are we seeing at present times is something devastating, which shows that something is wrong, either with our research, either with the mainstream of our research. I will show you some examples of how the things were, how the things are going, and what are the main points of my investigation in front of you today. So we are witnessing this permanent process of complete neglection of these traditional architecture as outdated and out of the cultural mainstreams. As you can see from the slide, were these people smaller than the ones that are living in the house on the right? Of course not. But which are those factors, cultural items, assets, whatever, that influenced complete change and transformation of the people's understanding of their existential space. So there is a huge amount of information that is needed for this to be understood, but nowadays we are completely neglecting this heritage and totally neglecting this attitude of the contemporary architecture is really alienating various cultural layers of the traditional structures. So this is not Photoshop in front of you. This is a slide which shows how two buildings are standing together. So this arrogant presence of this more contemporary structure on the right is completely canceling the existence of the building on the left, not even on the level of trying to correspond or to talk with, but imposing itself as a form of a contemporary culture, which is not acceptable because it is done really on the surface without scratching more into the deep. So that's why I'm going to talk about three typologies of vernacular or traditional experiences in my country, especially, although we are going to find the same repertoire of buildings starting from Portugal and Spain on west and moving through the Mediterranean and moving far to Mongolia and China, wherever you want. Many of those items are going to be recognized because of similar cultural processes or migrations or so. So I will talk about universal, primal, primitive, sustainable that are recognized on a really wide territory without borders in the general cultural manifestation. Then I will introduce you some of those transitional, which are showing how the costume of the architecture is going to be changed on top of the content, which is not going to be changed. So these transitionals are interesting because these are culturally mediated. They are influenced by transmissions and migrations, and they are localized with specific and visible local languages in architecture, which is encouraging further development. And in the second half of 19th and entire first half of 20th century, we have the so-called binary coded architecture. I used the binary coded architectural style for the first time when I wrote my book about ergonomy of architectural style. And this is a style appearance which is result of two or more components or intersections that are moving far from the origins and producing third self-defining entity. Talking about these universal or primal or so primitive buildings is interesting because I'm always giving this example that I measured and drawn on the slide. And this is a primitive shrine or sanctuary, which is a circular shaped building of mixed materials around an oak tree, which is already traditional part of ancient pagan beliefs. Inside we have stone crosses, stones from varieties of places, red and white threads, millions of other artifacts representing different varieties of religious practices inside, well known to all around, like a sacred place only. On the other side, on the left, we have the circular shaped building. It's a primal type of house with the fireplace in the middle, something which will be really repeated on a very wide territory. You will see how these are existing today. So this culture of symbolical meaning and respect of the threshold, of the fireplace, all these symbolical, sacral and mythopoetical values of the spaces of these buildings will be registered by anthropologists, by ethnologists, and these people are full of talks and talks about all these items. But if you try to ask them, would you be, giving this as a project for this and that NGO, they will not be even eager to talk to you because this is another level of communication. But we still have these buildings to witness, to compare, and to enjoy these wide symbolical values. If you search on internet today, you will find them all around the world. And we still have them alive in those geographies that I'm talking, using primitive materials, local materials, responding to the concept, and they are far away from any other general expression, style specifics. They are localized. They are expressing the first touch and the honesty with the material and the organization of the courtyard and of the buildings themselves, usually made of local materials and same organizational patterns within the buildings. You will see varieties of them. It is possible to talk about each one of them separately. What I want to show you is to show that people are capable of constructing them today. So these are photos of the quite newly constructed buildings showing that this is almost genetical issue. People know how to do that, but they are not going to do this in some kind of new urbanized environment. They will do it in the mountains, they will do it for the shepherds, they will do it hidden from the eyes of the others, which is completely opposite. Previously, they were done to face the eyes of the others. As you can see, this is possible even today, but the reasons of why and how the symbolical and other ritual practices and values of these buildings are understood and transformed is completely different and standing on a different standpoint. As you can see, on some of them, there are almost visible traces of new adaptations and so. With the transitional forms, we are seeing really a kind of lack of those symbolical universal values of vernacular, as I talked before. And I'm going to show you how these simple, non-recognizable buildings started to look like houses at the end. So this is the first costume that the buildings are taking on top of them, so to respond to a more different contextual cultural environment. This is the time of the first migrations of entire groups of people inhabiting houses from other groups of people, trying to arrange their own spaces inside, trying to adopt, trying to reshape, to reorganize, and trying to change the costume of the building by keeping the inside organization almost equally symbolically strong and anthropologically clear to be understood as with the primal compositions and with the primitive buildings that we saw before. When you see them in situ, you will understand that they saw something, they wanted to achieve something, but they stayed trapped in this journey from the primitive and primal to the something that should show a different cultural level of the inhabitants of those buildings. Those primitive, again, very primitive forms are clear geometrical ones with pure materials, but on the way to become something completely different. And you may find a lot of analogies with a huge amount of production, especially in the Mediterranean region with some of them, because these are obvious experiences from there. But without seeing the context of these buildings, you cannot understand the originality of the appearance of them. And there is varieties of them, to believe me, and they brought the entire traditional architectural production to the recognition of the so-called local schools of architecture that can be in the first and the second half of 19th century recognized on this level. But this also points to the developed skills, manners, developed practices, to develop constructing groups and people that were walking around the Balkans, traveling and building and bringing back home different elements which came from varieties of centers at that time. That was Istanbul and Thessaloniki, with developed markets of decorative elements. Once brought to the site, those decorative elements are going to start being applied on the same buildings that didn't have any kind of stylistic trace applied on top. So this is why it is difficult to talk about them today, because it looks like Western style influences, but this is for real binary coded, because in the contact in between the traditional patterns and completely for that time contemporary applications of decorations, it becomes something third, which is even not eclecticism of its kind. It have a tendency to show the new costume. In the class of people living in those buildings have mixtures of costumes. You should see that theater of urban applications. So this is the pure transformation of the society, of the culture, of the architecture that follows all these steps side by side. So these are wonderful examples of to which extent at the beginning of 20th century, this traditional architecture with no outdoors was able to select elements, to put them together, and to produce and put in front of us building with very consistent architectural style specifics. But was this the style of them? Of course not. These are still cultural transformations of a society who wants, through those even monumental experiments, to become something else, to show its growth, to show its emancipation within the given possibilities in the second half of 19th century in the Ottoman Empire, to become a citizen class and to show the grow up of completely new tendencies. So while we are approaching to the 20th century and the first presence of signed projects and buildings, we have to stop this presentation, because what was my goal? It was to examine and present in front of you this rich visual vocabulary of the emergence of this local identity, which is a result of the globalization of cultural values, uniform architectural styles, and stereotype patterns through discussing sustainability as a motivation for identity in culture and in architecture. So again, I wanted to explore identity as an essence of architecture that really goes beyond formal interpretations and visual metaphors, as always, through investigating sustainability potential of vernacular architecture. This is a huge question, because unfortunately, in the reality, in the ongoing architectural mainstreams, what we are witnessing is that with these anachronistic tendencies and inconsistencies, these are the results of the traumas of the countries and the nations are experiencing today. And not only through the centuries, but in the last years, decades, real behind us. So that's why we can say that cultural sustainability as it relates to sustainable development has to do with the maintaining of cultural beliefs, cultural practices, heritage conservation, culture as its own entity, and attempts to answer the question of whether or not any given cultures will exist in the context of the future. So I want just to put a question marks where this is moving. So by creating a virtual historical identification of the culture in the second decade of the 20th century, we are showing regression. We are not showing progress, because I am trying to remember the words of Mauro Savamini. Before that, he said that there is no recipe suitable for all cultures about sustainability, and it needs respect for the traditions, rituals of cultures that live where sustainability is to be applied. And one more lesson that we need to understand is that we as experts, as educators, as academicians, cannot just move in those communities, in those societies, in those small units with surviving elements of their own culture, imposing our own culture as the real truth. We cannot sell them the image of life that they have to be without us knowing and understanding the content of that life. Or to simplify it, we cannot sell them the product without explaining its content. And till we are the ones who understand the content, we will be that generation who will ruin the most important messages from the traditional cultures, from the vernacular architecture lessons, let's say, and we will be responsible for just letting things to happen. Are we going to? It's a huge question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kokan Grecev. Thank you very much. Cevat Hoca will share the participation certificate as well.
Of course.
We may start asking answer session if you wish. We can take the questions, or we can open up a discussion as we did for the morning session. Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us, dear Professor Kokan Grecev. Yes, we are going to have our ask and answer part. If any of our presenters or participants have any question, you can ask, or even you can write here.
If not, we may ask the similar question as Alper Hoca asked for the morning session and open up a discussion if you wish, Cevat Hoca.
Yes, yes.
In terms of sustainability, what should we do as the professionals of architecture starting immediately? I think this was a question that we may open up for a discussion, and our presenters can contribute if they wish. Because we have time.
Yes, of course.
Maybe starting from Özlem Hoca.
Thank you, Asif Hoca. I was thinking, because our presentation is also related to education, I think we need to integrate sustainability more to our educational curricula. We started doing that in many schools, but maybe it should be more, so that the professionals of future will have more sensitivity on these issues. This is one proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other?
Yeah, if I may add something, what we are doing in our programs at the University of Bologna is to try to give an holistic approach to the problem. So our programs are in architecture and building engineering. So we deal both with the architectural part and with the structural and plans issues, but we also try to give to the students the tools to face problems linked with restoration, for example, or urban planning. So the idea is to have this holistic approach to the problem of architecture and in general to the building of sustainable cities and neighborhoods. Really keeping together this interdisciplinary approach. This is something very important, I think, for the professionals of the future professionals.
Thank you very much. Yes, Professor Kokan.
Yes, thank you. I just heard the magical word, interdisciplinary approach. As I mentioned in my explanation also, I was lucky. For 15 years, I worked in the National Institute as architecture researcher. So when I was going on the site, I was doing my architecture measurements, drawings, photographing and everything, but anthropologists were doing their things, ethnographers, ethnologists, ethnomusicologists, folklorists, people that are covering all the aspects of the living culture. And today we are in a search for data explaining the living culture, because the living culture is the one that carries the sustainability as an item that should be reinforced in front of us. So that's why I'm saying there is no borders when we are talking. It's not important where you are. The approach should be the same, because knowing things from inside is not going to put us in that trap that I faced many times with failure projects given to, full of optimism, young researchers or NGO representatives, of media representatives saying, wow, this is interesting, this is this, this is that, but they are doing it on the surface. It's just a touristic product for them. It's not life itself. To understand the life in these communities, to give back life to them means that you need to know life from their perspective, and then to find the way how to balance it with the contemporary needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are waiting for other participants' comments or questions.
Cevat Hoca, there's a question.
Yes. Betül Ekimci asked question. Thank you for valuable presentation. My question is about Cyprus traditional houses. The white arc passing through the middle of the room seems to be more than structural bearing. Is it terrain division or arrangement related to this in the space?
Yes, maybe I should answer this. I presented the presentation related with the rural architecture in Cyprus. Yeah, the arts within the, let's say, closed spaces, of course, it's not only about load bearing, but I think by the help of this arch, it was possible to support, because these arts were stone, and in general, the outer shells were adobe. So these arts were providing larger spaces because, in general, the roof would not be having that span, but with an arch, a wider span could have been provided. The alternative was, of course, the mud brick wall, which would not let us have such an opening within that. So these stone arts were letting us having larger spaces, which was especially useful for, let's say, having a more, let's say, storage area for, let's say, winter time as well. I think that's more functional than being load bearing. And coming to previous discussion, what can be done? Because my presentation was related with rural traditional architecture and their potentials related with their responses to environment. First of all, I should say that the traditional rural architecture is maybe the one under most threats. Because cities have different layers, and they are usually having more legislation. But the rural architecture, it has usually been seen as a very secondary, very, let's say, a shanty, or maybe more low quality than the urban, let's say, cultural heritage buildings. So, for example, in Cyprus, these buildings are still not listed. There is no any legislation related with them. So day by day, we are losing them, and we are losing all these, all their peculiarities that we can learn as architects. So this is really something to worry about. I know that in Europe, especially during pandemic, there had been an increasing, let's say, demand to go to villages and continue their life in the villages by being online, working online. I know that from our discussions as civic as a part of ICOMOS. And I know that there are more legislations for Italy, for example, for preservation of the traditional houses and villages, and there are more funding. And of course, this pandemic was also a good opportunity for, let's say, giving an alternative to people, because people were not preferring to live in apartments anymore during pandemic, and villages were much more, let's say, free. But in many countries like Cyprus, maybe we can say developing countries, we don't see this kind of approach, and this causes loss of all these valuable, let's say, knowledge that has been produced throughout centuries or throughout thousands of years. And that's really a pity. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Afet Hocam, do you want to add anything, or I continue?
Is there any other question? How can we continue if you wish? And if there is not, we can...
I have a question from all the speakers. As you know, our morning session was in Turkish language, and we asked also the professors and the speakers, as the webinar title is the Sustainability Lessons from Traditional Architecture. If we want to come to some conclusions, I want to ask each of you one sentence or two sentences to have a conclusion that what are your suggestions? How can we use sustainability lessons from traditional architecture that you talk about? Yes, please. Özlem Hoca.
Thank you. I believe that we need to adopt the notions of traditional architecture instead of copying, imitating the forms which have been produced many years ago. This is what is being done in many cases. They're repeating the arches with new materials. They're imitating the forms, but instead of those, the designers need to produce new contemporary architecture by relying on the notions behind traditional or vernacular architecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, Gökhan Hoca.
Yes, I will just follow in the same spirit and going with this advertising, like the richness is inside. So we should stop taking things formally to look like. We should start understanding, so to apply what we understood and learned from the centuries and years of development. So let's start from the richness inside and build on top of that. Thank you.
A great sentence. Thank you very much.
Harun Hoca. You are muted, Harun Hoca.
I think it is more related to use of nature resources, because in the history, mankind used the resources in a very balanced way, and now we are constructing a lot of accommodations which are not usable and which has no foundation to the culture and social needs. This is, I think, what we observe. This is what we can learn from the past.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Other speakers and also participants can also add their comments. Yes, please, Professor Tondelli.
As I said, what we learned from our project is the need to keep together tangible and intangible heritage. So also to think about the values, the use you want to do of traditional architecture that may change over years, and to really involve also the community in defining the possible reuse of those buildings. So to find a way of having people deciding together what they want to do. This is the only way to make working what we are doing. Otherwise, the risk is just to work on dead buildings, and we cannot bring them alive alone without the people that wants to work and to have activities in them.
Thank you very much. Okay, other participants, dear speakers. We will be so happy to hear you. For morning sessions...
I would like to say something, Cevat Hoca.
Yes, sure.
It was a very fruitful seminar for me, starting from the morning till this time. I would like to thank each of the speakers and all the participants. We have listened sustainability from very different perspectives and from different contexts. I feel as if we were traveling the world as well. From Professor Simona's presentation, I have been in Trento. When I saw the photos, I feel very sincerely happy. From Kokan Hoca's presentation with the interesting photos, since we miss traveling the world, being together, seeing different cultures. It was a very nice experience for me. I would like to thank each and all of you.
Thank you very much, Afet Hoca. I also want to thank everyone for joining that joint seminar. We hope we can continue such kinds of scientific gathering and events together. Thanks again for joining us. If you don't have any comments or any other things, we can say bye-bye and wish a good night and good evening for you.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good time.
我很想要看。